mean, the far leftists, even the notion that someone could be born in the wrong body is indirectly a theological statement, because it indirectly says that there is a soul that is born in the wrong physical body. It's Gnosticism.
Wow. Okay. I guess you gotta. All right. So we're gonna have to get into this. So this is Ruslan covering a debate that Michael Knowles had. So we're kind of covering someone covering something. So it's kind of a meta cover. That's what I like to call it. And yeah, so we're gonna get into it. It's gonna be fun. So I am Brentley, and this is the Punk Apostate. Let's go. So, yeah, like I said, this is this guy, Ruslan. He's a really popular YouTuber, Christian YouTuber. Seems like he's an okay guy. I think he seems like he's trying at least to like not be awful all the time. I think more so than a lot of the other Christian YouTubers, but he's still, very, I don't know, just very overly simplistic, of course, because it's the Christian worldview kind of requires you to be overly simplistic, as we could just hear from that previous clip. So we'll let it go ahead and let him get into it. This is Michael Knowles debating a TikTok activist about the existence of God.
Michael Knowles debates viral BLM activist Joshua Joseph.
Okay, so you're saying that there is an objective moral law that is dictated to us by a God of some sort.
Yeah, but, and it's no.
They really like this objective moral law thing. I don't know why they think that this is a selling point for them. So if I can poison the well here for a second, if you're going to have objective law, you got to be able to demonstrate that it is not only objective, but you know what it is. Because if you're just saying that there's some objective morality, some objectively perfect way to behave out in the ether there, but nobody can know what it is, and everybody's deciding that it's different things, and then you got a bunch of people saying that mine is the objective one, and then other people going, no, yours isn't the objective one, mine is the objective one. And if you got then it's not fucking objective. That's how this works. Okay, it's objective if it's true outside of the opinion of any thinking mind, which I think that they get lost on that. They don't understand. They're like, but my God, like, because if this only works if you're presupposing that a God exists, and then the God that exists is their God, and then the God that exists that is their God is also being interpreted by them correctly. Only if you presuppose all three of those things does their argument make any sense.
Knowable through reason.
Yeah, and it's knowable, but we've been fallen, and therefore we don't know the moral law without substantiating.
No, we do have a reasonable degree of certainty about certain things.
He is talking about the moral law. What is he doing? He's echoing Romans chapter 1, Romans chapter 2, talking about how the Gentiles have the law written on their hearts, how we know right from wrong. And he says, because of the fall, we have drifted further and further away from this moral law. St. Thomas Aquinas would describe it as
and which is amazing that they can think that we drifted more from this moral law. And as of late, I don't know how you can look at history and think that we've drifted away from a moral law. If anything, I'd say we've drifted towards a moral law that is better, because we get to the point where now, where like if you go like far left, people don't want to clap in stadiums because that could upset somebody that's got PTSD and hearing all the claps and everything. So like they're like, let's do snap. Like that's how sensitive we have gotten. There's like a large group of people that are that. So like that's the direction that I think is more moral than not, right? Not giving a shit what anybody else thinks. And like, who cares if somebody else's PTSD fires up, that. And so I don't know. It's interesting to me that they can think that we've drifted away from some kind of perfect moral law when we look in the past and there was slavery and just, like the behavior of like Vikings and stuff, just showing up and just pillaging and plundering and doing all this disgusting shit. And that was just normal. That was commonplace. And now that's not anywhere to be found.
The natural law, if you will, right? That we are hardwired, not just with a conscience, but the ability to know right from wrong. And this gentleman is pushing back on this. And listen, if you guys didn't notice, Michael Knowles pointed back to the fall, right? And so watch what happens next.
Winfrey said Michael Knowles fights a child he met on the internet. Yeah, I mean, that's one way to put it. That's one way to put it. Yeah.
At least 99 of them are going to agree that murder is wrong. But we don't possess perfect intellect and perfect will.
The thing is, the reason why I don't subscribe to that is because there is no demonstration, there is no substantiating that any of that even happened that led to a fallen moral world, and that's why we're here today.
What do you mean by that?
When I say that there's no demonstration, I mean religion is an unfalsifiable concept, in that it's
falsifiable. You could try to make an argument.
You can't falsify it because we have no way of even measuring a supernatural phenomenon, because we have no way to even develop a criteria by which we measure supernatural.
But we can know.
We have no way of measuring a supernatural phenomenon. Here's the issue with that statement. And anyone that's halfway versed in anything regarding the beginning of the universe will concede that science says, just give us one miracle and we could explain everything else. So even
what? That's what science says? Science says, give us one miracle and then we'll explain everything else. That's not, I think what he's trying to say is that science doesn't explain certain things, which it's trying to, like, it does the best that we can do. Like, like science isn't some super thing that it's just an all-knowing thing. It's like it's a process, it's a model of how we evaluate the world to come to the most reasonable conclusions about how the world works. And yeah, it's unfinished. It's always going to be unfinished. We're always going to have information that we are trying to get, and hopefully the more we investigate, the more we learn, and the smaller that window is,
secular Darwinianism aspect of evolution and the Big Bang and all that kind of stuff. You still need a miracle. This has been acknowledged by Joe Rogan. We've acknowledged it on the channel before. So I don't know if Josh
the fallen world sounds like a much more fun LARP setting than it really is. Yeah, like a live action role play. Yeah.
Just doesn't know this. But Michael handles this brilliantly. And by the way, the reason for that set, which I think looks super nuts, is because they're in the Matrix. They're out of the Matrix debating this conversation. So that's why it looks like that. It's pretty dope. So go ahead.
Because like they're not on social media.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Oh, there are, for instance,
you can believe.
I guess this gets back to what we were talking about earlier, right? I can believe and I can think things and I can have opinions that are my perception of reality, and they can be more or less correct. But when it comes to religion, say, the question is, does God exist or does God not exist?
That's right.
And it seems to me there are many very good arguments for the existence of God.
Hold on, that's not just the question. The thing is, and this is where I think people get messed up with atheists, is they think that we're saying that anything that could be described even sort of similarly to a god by somebody doesn't, like, we don't, nothing exists like that, which I don't think that we're saying that. We're saying that all the gods that have been presented, all the different ones that we are aware of, aren't real. They've all been made up by people, and they're just claims that these things are real. But like, they're like, oh, so like, how did everything come into existence? And we're like, we don't know. And they're like, oh, but you're making a claim that you do know that nothing that could in the future be described as a god doesn't exist. Right. But the problem is they will say anything could be described as a god. Like, I heard somebody saying that the observer effect was a god, and they're like, that proves a god. And I'm like, why? And they're like, because there was something observing, So it's like, okay, so now a god is just something that observes. That's it. Like, and I'm not even getting into how wrong they were about the observer effect, because that's not what it means. But anyway, but yeah, so this is why I almost take the atheist's position, which is the question of whether a god exists is incoherent, because there is no coherent definition of what a god is. It's all completely, nebulous, and is just kicking the goalposts all over the place all the time. And if you can't tell me what the thing is that I'm supposed to believe that it exists or not believe that it exists, then I can't come to a conclusion on that, because you can't even give me a definition that is coherent and sort of all-encompassing that we can either believe in or not believe in. It's complete nonsense.
I mean, there are many very good arguments against the existence.
I've never seen a good one.
Well, that doesn't mean that there aren't any.
Well, yeah, I thought I've looked for them. I haven't found them.
I'm not sure how confident I am.
So he makes a fundamental mistake that atheists make all the time. I'm not sure if you guys caught it, but I'm going to unpack it here in a moment. But let's let him flesh out his thought.
That you've looked for. I've seen some of your
I
stuff.
have. I was an
reacting to
atheist for
certain
10
people.
years.
I've seen some of your stuff reacting to certain
Bullshit.
people, how you like portray their argument.
I hate it when they say, I was an atheist for 10 years. Like, I just highly doubt it, man. If you were an atheist, I don't think it was, like, how do you go from being an atheist and being like open, like curious and all this stuff, and then end up Michael fucking Knowles, you know, except that, actually, you know what? Yeah, because he's like, that's where the money's at. Never mind. He might have been an atheist that was just an asshole and dishonest and was like, you know, I can lie for money. I can do that. And it's clearly worked.
Off. Again, and it's completely fine to voice or frame an argument in a particular way if it goes against something that you deeply hold. But the reason why I don't develop,
I don't understand what you mean by that. You're saying that I've articulated a view that you find wrong, but you think it's fine for me.
No,
I'm
saying that I think that it's like I won't say fine.
He's trying to be nice, man. He's just trying to be like, look, I get why you think this stupid shit.
I think that it's understandable, which I should say.
He's basically saying, I think you're being disingenuous with some of your arguments and the way you approach arguments.
No,
that disagree with yours.
How does he get that? He's like, he's saying, I understand why you think what you think, based on, you know, he's like, but I think you're wrong. But he's like, I get where you're coming from. He's just trying to fucking be nice, man. Damn. And he's like, I think you're lying.
But I get it because that's your tribe and that's what your core beliefs. So you're naturally going to take that bias.
Exactly.
Couch certain arguments, that you'd couch certain arguments that like disagree with your religion in a negative light or whatever, because I don't think that you've genuinely, honestly gone and searched some good arguments for and against religion.
Did you guys catch it? Did you catch it? Because I don't think you have genuinely and honestly went and searched out those arguments.
And honestly, I think is the main word there. But wouldn't you say that wouldn't you say that same thing about somebody that doesn't believe in God? And you're like, I don't think you've honestly assessed the arguments for a God, because you would be at my conclusion if you had honestly evaluated the good arguments for God or whatever. Like, this is what a weird thing to like sit on and act like it's so fucking profound.
This is the mistake of every person who deconverts, deconstructs, leaves the faith, and the way they continue engaging with people who are still of the faith. This is the fundamental flaw in how they engage these conversations. I think you haven't genuinely looked at the other arguments. Now listen to how masterfully Michael Knowles answered this.
JJ,
I mean, I don't think they, in all honesty, I think that they've seen the arguments. I think they've heard the arguments and everything, but I don't think they've honestly evaluated themselves while evaluating the arguments, because you have to have a level of honesty with yourself about what you do and do not know that Christians and other religious people just refuse to be fucking honest about. And that's what we're talking about. You're not being honest with yourself. You've landed on a conclusion. You've started from a conclusion, and then you're working your way backwards and finding evidence that confirms what you would already like to think in the first place, mainly because it was probably taught to you by your parents and you're trying to fit in with your group or whatever the fuck, right? But you're not honestly looking at the arguments. You're just looking at the arguments far enough to be able to, oh, but look, this Aquinas argument over here, or this William Lane Craig thing over here says, that's as far as you've looked at the arguments. It's just enough to be able to say, and of course, I don't know if that's true, but that's what I think personally, because I know that's what I did when I was a Christian. So, and I know plenty of other people that have said the exact same thing. So
I was an atheist for 10 years. I was a pretty ardent atheist for like 10 years. I was quite taken with people like, Richard Dawkins, Daniel Dennett, Christopher Hitchens, Sam Harris.
And people do this. You almost need to ask them, like, where would you be on the Dawkins scale? Or ask them something that would, get them to prove that they actually did believe in that they were an actual atheist. Because I think people say this all the fucking time just so they can feel like there's credibility or something.
And more serious atheists too, like Bertrand Russell, one of the great logicians of the 20th century. And
I believe that your reasoning in this fallen world has been clouded.
It clearly was, because I was taken by the atheists for 10 years.
I believe your reasoning was, because I was listening to the atheist.
What the fucking...
Yep, I was listening to the atheist.
Went back, or after you went. away from atheism.
Right. Well,
That's a whole
but
other
the thing that
meta
but it's
conversation.
pretty important because ultimately they're going to come down to whether or not God exists.
Absolutely.
Because really basic aspects of how we're even speaking here will come down to that. How is it?
It can come down to that, but again, you have no way of demonstrating that a God exists, that you know that
there are many good arguments for God. I
there's
could
many
give
good
them to you right
arguments. You have no demonstration of whether or not a God exists,
I
what their
certainly
moral
could.
code
This is
is,
why-
if your God.
This is why those arguments are still happening, because no, you can't settle it. And I think that they set up an unfalsifiable scenario so that they can dance around in the ambiguity of it all.
God is the correct God, if your God is the only option
only
over
one.
other, yeah, according to you.
But I happen to be correct.
Yeah, according
He's so snarky.
This is a fundamental flaw I see repeatedly made, assuming that people who are followers of Jesus were never once not followers of Jesus.
Hmm.
And then
That's not-
telling them to their face, yeah, I just don't think you really looked at the arguments against God.
Yeah, but
You
well, I mean,
pointed out, imagine being 19 years old,
TikTok star.
TikTok star, and saying this to a Harvard graduate. I know you believe in God and you have good reason to believe in God and defend your arguments, but
it's money. Money is the reason why he's going to be dishonest about this type of stuff, man. It's much more lucrative to be like him, to be a reactionary YouTuber. And what's the main base that you got to placate to? The fucking Christians. He has so much more to prove in order to be seen as honest, because he's just so dishonest on the fucking face of it all. So it's like, he needs to do a lot more to prove that he's actually honest about and have actually honestly evaluated the fucking arguments.
I don't think you have really looked at the evidence. And then Michael Knowles goes, no, you don't understand. I was an atheist for 10 years, as was I, right? Like, I have. No, you don't get it. They weren't convincing, and that's why I became a theist and eventually became a believer.
Okay, so make the fucking arguments then, man. Like, what are you doing? Just shut up and make the fucking argument.
Follower of Jesus. No, I don't believe you. If this isn't hubris and arrogance on Joshua's part,
Oh, totally.
I don't know what is. And then he gets.
But it's not hubris when he says that. But I'm correct on this. I'm actually correct without any intellectual honesty or humility or anything.
a bit riled up and is saying like, you can't demonstrate God and you can't do this. And it's like, wait. Michael Knowles is having a reasonable, logical, coherent conversation with him.
He's really not.
About why God exists and about how we can know certain absolute morality.
He's refusing to answer any questions. Like, honestly, he's dancing around. He's not doing anything. He's just and this is what they do to avoid getting to the substance of it, because they know that once you start to pin them down on literally fucking anything, it proves that their little magical fucking friend that they think is so totes real is completely nuts.
You can't demonstrate that a soul exists. You can't demonstrate that consciousness exists. There's a lot of things you can't demonstrate.
Yeah,
that we
I
would
like
all.
that. Tate said, everyone is an atheist. We are just one God more of an atheist than them. I like that because and I remember hearing somebody saying this was an argument. I'm like, it's not really an argument. It's an olive branch. It's an attempt to be like, hey, we're the same, you and I, we're the same, like, and Christians would be like, no, fuck you, no.
Agree to. I mean, the far leftists, even the notion that someone could be born in the wrong body is indirectly a theological statement, because it indirectly says that there is a soul that is born in the wrong physical body. It's Gnosticism.
That's crazy.
Right? So you can't
yeah, crazy fucking stupid, man. That's a toddler's evaluation of like of the medical practice or the medical treatment for gender dysphoria, which is to transition. It's not, it's like, and it's ignoring the fact that, the gender is a social construct and some of us fit within that construct better than others. And it's a spectrum and it's, all these things like there's no soul needed for this stuff. It's insane what they're just like, oh, but the soul got in the wrong body. And that means that they believe in souls. It's like, what are you fucking two? Like, how does this work? Jesus.
Substantiate that claim. You can't provide any evidence that a soul exists. What you're really saying,
actually, we can provide quite a bit of evidence that the soul does not exist. just with neuroscience in general. Because here's the thing: if a soul did exist, there's ways to falsify this, right? Because if a soul did exist, that means you, who you are, would be in the soul part of your brain, right? And that part of the brain does not exist, right? And we've even seen that when people get their brain damaged, their personality changes, who they are changes. That would not happen if it were like, what, did this fucking soul get damaged? Huh? Like, what did the soul split in two? Like, because there, people have gotten brain damage and then split into two different personalities. Now, are there two souls? And one of them is a Christian and the other one isn't. Is it half a soul each? Like, it doesn't fucking work. We can really, the evidence against a soul is pretty goddamn conclusive. Okay. If you look at neuroscience for any amount of time.
Speaking strictly materialistic and naturalistic, what you're really saying is neurologic.
Logic. I like that. I caught him right here. He's like, I gotta get this right. Hold on. Neuro, what's the word again? Neurologic. Where we said a toddler's view of Gnosticism too. Yeah, straight up, dude. I guess this is why he appeals to so many people, because it's like it reminds me of like so many of the Christians that are just ultra simple, just don't like thinking at all for themselves. Like they just go along, to get along kind of thing, that they're not trying to make waves, they're just like keeping their head down, like, which is the main thing that most Christians do. The one piece that you get out of Christianity is not having to think anymore. You can just take out your brain and set it on the fucking shelf and you can be good. You don't have to make any decisions. Okay. Your religion can make your decisions for you from here on out,
Logical phenomenon should be acknowledged as reality. And I would say, no, there are all kinds of neurological things happening in your feelings, in your thoughts, that don't need to be acknowledged by the rest of society.
Yeah.
And probably shouldn't be acted upon for a lot of us. Because some of us before Jesus and even with Jesus thinking, feel some crazy things that need to be suppressed to the truth of God. So this entire notion, I think, is
I'm completely confused. Let me go back a little bit.
Things happening in your feelings, in your thoughts. You can't provide any evidence that a soul exists. What you're really saying, if we're just stuck speaking strictly materialistic and naturalistic, what you're really saying is neurological phenomenon should be acknowledged as reality. And I would say, no, there are all kinds of neurological things happening in your feelings, in your thoughts, that don't need to be acknowledged by the rest of society.
Yeah.
And probably shouldn't be acted upon.
What the fuck is he talking about? Neurology, like neuroscience and stuff, is demonstrable. That's what makes it neuroscience. Like we can look at the brain while it's doing certain things and see what lights up and see how it works and everything, so that we can figure things out. Like this is demonstrative. Not to mention like everything I was just saying about being able to study the brain when different things go wrong with it. And that's actually when we've been able to study it the most, is when something is wrong with it. And we can see how that functions,
For a lot of us, because some of us before Jesus and even with Jesus thinking, feel some crazy things that need to be suppressed to the truth of God. So this entire notion, I think, is so arrogant, but it's so common.
So arrogant. Yeah, they're the arrogant ones. Good God. Winfrey said no more accountability either. Satan did it to me and God will fix it for me. Yeah. So you don't have to be accountable for anything. You're just you just keep on asking forgiveness, and then it doesn't really matter what you do.
For atheists to talk like this,
it's crazy.
Yeah, the saying that we're arrogant is just so it's just infuriating when you have these people not only pretending like they know how the universe came into existence, what caused it, what that thing that caused it wants, how to behave according to that thing that created everything. Like they just make just assumption on top of fucking assumption, and then they want to say that we're arrogant for not buying all their goddamn assumptions and be like, yeah, I don't think you fucking actually know any of this stuff, man. You're just making it up. It's too easily demonstrated to not be correct, because y'all can't even fucking agree about which God and what it wants and which kind of God, which denomination, which interpretation, all this type of stuff. Y'all can't agree on jack shit. And you'd think that that perfect, all-powerful fucking being would want to communicate clearly what it wants to communicate with us. But it manages to not be able to communicate anything because it's not there. It's just people.
Yeah, it's wild. Yeah, I just couldn't imagine being in that position where it's like, I don't think you've thought about it. And he's like,
Yeah.
I've had 10 years as an atheist, as an adult atheist. Not like I'm 10 years old and I grew up.
He's like, I'm not saying he's not saying that he doesn't think he thought about it. He's saying he doesn't think that he honestly evaluated it. He thought about it, but only in the context of how can I prove this? How can I respond to this argument? That's it. You know, he's thought about it maybe in that regard, because I just don't see how you can land on the conclusions that Christians land on if you've actually evaluated honestly with what you do and do not know, you know, about reality. You can't honestly come to the conclusion that, okay, yeah, maybe I do know how the universe came into existence and that what that thing is that caused it and what it wants. And you can't do that honestly, because you would have to say, I actually don't know any of this stuff.
In an atheist household.
Right. And just the academic disparity.
The academic disparity is like,
I thought the experts like didn't matter, man. Like I thought that it's funny how they are like, oh, you know, we look to the experts or people with academia when it's convenient, you know, but most of the time, Michael Knowles would be the exception of academia. You know, he lands on conclusions that are completely in the opposite of the consensus of scholarship.
He's in a field that is known for thinking, that is known for research. And then also just field? Like the age difference.
What, are you talking journalist? A Daily Wire journalist? He's like, yeah, that's a field of study. What the fuck? What are you doing?
With age comes wisdom.
Well, at 19, you think you know everything.
Oh,
why is that?
You sound like you think you know what that 19-year-old thinks he knows.
Because it's the first part where you start feeling like a grown-up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But your brain's not fully developed and people start treating you like a grown-up, because I didn't think he was 19. I mean, this kid, he looks older than 19.
Right, he might be 20 like at this point.
He could be 25, 30, 35, you know, 30 years old, right?
Yeah.
So but there is a thing about
the interesting part too is that, you know, I bet you this dude's closer to my age probably, which I'm 39, and I bet you this dude's probably close to my age. And so when he was 19, yeah, we were pretty stupid. We didn't have the internet. We had it, but it was mostly just for porn, you know, and to sneak porn at that. I think maybe you could pay like a couple bills or something, you know, online or whatever, but that was it, you know, and it was a fucking task to try to figure out how to do. And so, but now the kids have just unlimited access to information, you know, and as long as you know how to vet sources and actually check if something is accurate based on scholarship, then you're good. You can learn just about anything now.
Like something about like your brain at 19, 18, 19, you just think you have it all figured out.
If God were to exist, God would be the creator of all things, by definition.
Yeah.
So God would create not only space, but time. Right. So God would necessarily be outside of space and outside of time.
Oh, he wouldn't necessarily. He could. Again, we're talking
he's
about
the maker of all things, then he made time.
No, well, I mean, if he's the maker of all things, he could make time, but he could also make himself subject to time, because again, this is the power of a God we're talking about. We're operating on the framework that, as we understand time, the thing that has to create time has to be outside of it. But like I was saying,
God does enter into time in the incarnation.
Yeah, but like
got that? He's like,
why do you keep making that noise?
God is
like, oh man, boom. Like that's like he thinks that's a mic drop. He's like, because Jesus was like, you know, he didn't exist within 0 fucking seconds. So it's like, what?
Outside of time, but he can subject himself into time. And he's like, yeah, Jesus.
Yeah.
Like Jesus enters into time. So I like how Michael is taking what he's saying and actually driving him back to the source.
But it's funny too, because a lot of these arguments, they're just made up. You know, when they're just saying, okay, so if something did create time, we'd have no good reason to think that anything did create time. Time is just something that exists fundamentally for our reality. It's almost just like a description. Like we just describe things happening one after another in a linear fashion as time. I don't think that it needed to be created. I think that's a weird thing to even say, but they kind of need it to, because they need him to be as undetectable as humanly fucking possible, right? Or inhumanly fucking possible, right? So he has to be completely undetectable, which means that, hey, man, he's not even in time, bro. So how do you judge if something exists if it's not even in under the authority of time? Good luck finding that. Like, it's just a way to say that you can't detect it even more. That's all.
Not to mention, like even just like a metaphor, like another view of it would be like, if you're the boss of a company, you can subject yourself to the same hours that your employees have to show up, because maybe you want to be there for the team, XYZ, but you could wake up.
So let me see here. Al said sequence is created by God outside of that same sequence, right? So like, yeah, it's good, because I mean, and it's interesting too, because like he, even from the beginning, you're like, he's outside of time, but he took 6 days. Like, then if he's outside of time, why did it take him like, not just like zero time to make everything? Like, it took him days, a week it took him to make stuff, and then he was tired, so he had the rest. Like, completely sounds like something not unrestrained by the confines of time.
Up someday and be like, I'm not coming in today.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
In the same way, you create that time on a very small level.
I ain't getting out of bed today.
Like, God created time, can be subject to it by sending
he made
his
the schedule.
son.
He made the schedule.
He made the schedule. And so he can be in it or he can be out of it.
You've arrived at an important distinction between
hold on. Before we get to the distinction, I want to
and to be fair, Michael Knowles is working against his own education. Let's just say, doing what he's doing on the Daily Wire is exactly in contrast to what all academic reasoning would lead you to think. Anyway, but Lisa said the kid wiped the floor with the Harvard grad. That's awesome. Yeah, he really did. I mean, it because you can just kind of see that he's grasping. Knowles is grasping at trying to just find anything to make his worldview not sound like just a pile of assumptions that nobody can demonstrate, and those assumptions just keep getting more and more specific until you land on fucking Catholicism.
Press down on the fact that if God has created this water right here, this water currently is not wine. Doesn't matter at which point he decides to make it wine, he has to decide to make it wine. That is, in a sense, the unmoved mover moving, because you have to be in a state of mind to, okay, I made this is water. I now want this to be wine. That is you making a decision. You are changing your mind about something.
Well, yeah,
if that's the case, then God has to be a moved mover, because you cannot say that, oh, well, you know what, he's just an unmoved mover, but I'm going to pray to him and he's going to do something for me that he hasn't already done, because he has to change something about himself in order to do that.
Well, our lives unfold through history, and the way to understand God's relationship to history is through a concept of providence.
So he completely ignored what his point was, and now he's moving on to something completely different.
Christianity is especially an historical understanding of God, because God takes on human flesh in the incarnation, and lives for 33 years, and then is crucified, and then on the third day rises again from the dead, and then he's on earth for 40 days, and then he ascends up into heaven and sends the Holy Spirit to his church, which is the visible expression of God's kingdom here on earth. So I'm with you in God's role in history, but the error you've made is that you have forced God to be subject to time before God made time.
No, I'm saying, but again, this is assuming that he did any of those things, but I'm saying, how do you know that he couldn't have made himself subject to that time? How do we know that it's without? How do we know that it's outside of the possibility of a God to both create
God
time
has to come
and create himself in the time? How do we know that one has to incarnation? How do we know that one has to proceed?
He keeps pointing it back to Jesus, and his dude just not getting it.
Yeah, and also I don't even get how this is disproving the argument.
No, because I think what he was talking about was the fact that people pray to God, basically acting like what he just said about God, what Knowles just said about God, isn't true. That he's not outside of time. Like, he has to do things within time and make, like, why would you? I don't know. I mean, it's just this is where I think it's dumb to even run around with these conversations in the weeds, because like it's built on so many fucking assumptions that it's unreasonable to follow them around. You're like, no, come back to where we know like things are true. Like, let's go back to like what we can agree on as reality before we start making all these fucking assumptions. And okay, now we're at like a God that made time, and he's outside of time, but he's also subject to it. And none of this is real. This is all just made up fucking shit so that they can rationalize around their irrational belief.
This is just like this concept of, how do you know God is outside of time? It's like, well, at least we're arguing for God choosing to be in time or out of time. But like, you don't even believe God exists.
Yeah.
We're operating on the framework of God.
Because the creator has to precede the created.
Yeah, but that's
space-time is created. It's part of physical creation.
Well, does it have to? Again, we're talking about God. If I
what is going on?
create something.
This just goes on and on, man. I'm going to react to some more parts of this conversation just because I think it's probably so fascinating.
It's probably about to be like, this is why this is incoherent. It's something that created time, but then is also subject to it and decides that he's such. I don't really know where he was going with that, and he's clearly cutting him off. So I'm not really sure, but I think those kinds of conversations are a waste of fucking time, because you're just chasing around their assumptions, looking for inconsistencies when their assumptions are magic based. You can't, if there's any inconsistency, they'll be like, but God's magic though. So it's pointless to try to chase them around and find inconsistencies within those types of beliefs and assumptions, because it's just, there is no winning that. They can always just be like, but God magic.
There's another part we can go to if you guys want to see another part specifically about morality. But I think the idea that you have to substantiate the existence of God.
Let me get some of these. Maybe he understands this philosophy stuff better than I do. How can you schedule outside of time? Is that not just planning an order of events? How can you schedule? Yeah. I don't know, because to me, time is not something that you can be within or without. Like, it doesn't make sense that it's just a description of the way things work, like the way things happen, one thing after another. I think us deciding that there had to be a time before time is completely irrational. It's like there's a being could not exist within 0 seconds. That just doesn't make fucking sense. Like, what was it? Everything stuck in 0 seconds, and then all of a sudden God was like, okay, I exist, and I've always have existed. Now I'm going to make other things exist, and now we can like start the clock. That's so incoherent. It's not fucking funny. Like, Jesus, it's ridiculous. Harvard sweater vests are known better than any Veleda mop. I don't know what that is. Veleda sounds like some kind of cheese brand or something, like some Veleda cheese. I don't know. That's Velveeta. That's what I'm thinking. I don't know. Let's see. How do we even know what God's relativistic time is versus Earth or any other part of the universe? How much gravity is God affected by? Exactly. Yeah, like this is what I'm saying, because it's made up, and you know what? A unicorn might have like 0 gravity. It can just stand on top of my head without hurting me at all, because you know what? It's a fucking unicorn. It doesn't exist. It's not real. I can make it, weigh whatever the fuck I want, and that's exactly how their fucking God is. Lisa said, watch Knowles' body language. He is cornered. Yeah, I could see that too. He looks really uncomfortable when he starts getting into when he starts to get challenged. He's okay at seeming like he knows what he's talking about, even when he's just saying really dumb shit, basically just asserting the claims that. And I wish people would, just stop them from doing that. You got to just like take them back. I mean, and while I don't like the guy that wrote this book, it is still a really good book. It's a manual for creating atheists. I wouldn't, but I already had it before he turned into a fucking supervillain. But it's Peter Boghossian is what I'm talking about. And but that book is really good about like how to like walk them back to their faith. The faith is what you need to attack, right? Because we can give them facts and evidence and all this stuff all day fucking long. Doesn't matter. They're just going to go back to, but God can do it though. But God magic though. But God magic. And you could always do that. But you got to attack their confidence in the God magic, their confidence in the claims, in their beliefs in the first place. That's what you go after. Don't worry about all the fucking facts and like trying to present facts, because they can always just be like, but magic though. It's like it's a losing battle. Let's see. Al said, I'm certain this shit ass God doesn't exist. Exactly. I feel like I could just say that. To me, again, like, I don't know what somebody will define as a God some point down the line, even if it's something that doesn't know it exists, almost like that movie. I always think of that movie, the Annihilation. Remember, like, the mirror alien thing that like just creates stuff, and like he creates like mirror images of everything, but it doesn't know that that it exists, and it doesn't know that it's creating or destroying anything. It doesn't know anything. It's just a thing that does stuff. I think it could be like that there's some being, and then of course they would be like, that's the God we've been talking about this whole time. No, the fuck it's not. It wasn't something that sent a carpenter to sacrifice himself to himself. That's not what you were talking about. So that's why I say, from the atheist position of like the whole question is incoherent, because there's no definition of what a God even is that's coherent. But let's see where we're at. Chuck said, not even magic can exist outside of gravity. Hey Kevin, what's up, man? That's me bandmate. That's me bandmate. It's our guitarist. Let's see, one foot. If God is that cosmic and outside of time, it would explain why he hasn't showed up. God just blinked and missed us. Yeah, dude. I mean, if he's that far out of time, why not? Fuck it. Shit. Let's see. Yeah, space and time are intertwined. Yeah, it's like a continuum or something. I don't know. It just keeps going, I guess. I don't.
I think it's such a double standards by people who operate in the world that presupposes a bunch of things we can't substantiate. And I wish that the non-believer, the atheist, agnostic was just consistent in that.
The obnoxious part here is that they are presupposing way more. They're presupposing a reason, because like a skeptic, what we have to presuppose is like the shit that everybody presupposes, regardless if you're an atheist or not. We presuppose that fucking reality is real. Okay. Yeah. We're sharing it. Yeah. We can't demonstrate that. I can't prove that I'm not fucking dreaming. Right. But we have to presuppose that in order to have any kind of coherent thinking at all. That's why we have to presuppose these things. We also have to presuppose the laws of logic. They consistently demonstrate, though, that their usefulness. You know what I mean? Like, that's the crazy thing, is they're like, oh, you can't demonstrate the laws of logic, but we're using them right now. Every time I use them, I demonstrate their efficacy, I'd say, right? And they do definitely lead to the most reasonable conclusions. Anyway, so that's the type of stuff we have to presuppose, and it's just so that we can even like have a game board to be able to interact with, like a fucking Monopoly game. Like, you got to have the rules of Monopoly in order to be able to play Monopoly. We're having a conversation at a debate or an exchange of ideas. We have to have these basics in order to even have the conversation about the existence of God and yada, 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 all these other things, or just anything for that matter. Any debate about literally anything, you got to presuppose that reality is real and the laws of logic. Like, you have to presuppose like little basic things, the fact that we are conscious, independently thinking beings or whatever, shit like that we can't necessarily demonstrate. But
they could make the entire conversation way better. And I also think in a good faith conversation, what I'm not going to do is ever assume that someone is being disingenuous in their beliefs.
Yeah.
He didn't say that, man. He didn't say that he was being disingenuous in his beliefs. He was saying he didn't think that he had honestly evaluated the arguments. That's all he was saying. And he even put his like, I'm not convinced on it, which that's literally being honest. Like, I honestly just don't think that you have considered honestly the debate, the arguments for this proposition.
It's just, you are going into the conversation assuming that the reason why Michael Knowles is a follower, Christian, theist, whatever, is because it serves him, versus instead of he wanting to serve God.
And that is platitudinal. I've never heard it as platitudinal. angle on apologetics. Yeah, it's just fucking platitudes that you know. Yeah.
I just don't think is a good way to say. I don't think in all my 19 years, 20 years of
In
wisdom.
a tweed jacket, yeah, with suede elbow patches. You know, that's it's like Ross. You know,
And knowledge, I
these aren't suede. No, I don't have suede.
don't think you've looked at the best arguments. Like, to a Harvard grad, like, the hubris is outlandish.
Yeah, not to mention if you're 19.
Yeah, they're hubris. You know, it's not the hubris of the people pretending to know where the universe came from, what created it, and that they have a personal relationship with that thing that they can't demonstrate. You know, that's not hubris at all. That's just good critical thinking right there.
There's only like 8 or 7 actionable years of maybe some wisdom.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
There's like your brain is developing just to like hold a conversation up until 12 years old.
Yep.
Then you have some learning and critical thinking
Mhm.
that may be applied. And by 19, you're just so it's not even like my
This is a
19 years of
weird-
wisdom. It's like
A way to like not engage with the person as the person, like way too. This is fucking hubris right here. Like, but you're stupid though because of your age. No, so I'm right because you're not only 19. Like that is by definition an ad hominem. Like this has nothing to do with any of his actual arguments. But I hope they get into the objective morality thing because that's what I thought was happening here.
7
Yeah,
of my
maybe.
observation.
Maybe you were sentient for like maybe 10. You know, it's questionable if an 8 or 9-year-old is actually sentient. So at 19,
What does he think sentient means?
by sentient, I just mean self-aware. You know,
Yeah.
You don't
like
think a kid?
my daughter
You don't think a kid is self-aware at fucking 8 years old? Wow, talk about hubris. You know,
just started acknowledging that she's a person named Zoe and she's 2. You know, up until that point,
Zoe.
no,
okay,
she
yeah, 2 is not 8, man.
just didn't even want to acknowledge that her name was Zoe and that she,
That is,
you know what I mean?
So
God.
So that's a whole nother conversation about like when does consciousness really start to click, you know, and when do you start like, you know, so
I think the kids I think kids start to enjoy life. Like my son is 5 months old,
What is happening? How did we? Where did we? Okay.
and there's a little like
there's a spark
there's a
there,
spark.
but it's not the same.
It's definitely a
when you're
spark.
14.
It's a spark. That's the best way of saying it. Is that like, oh, he gets me. Like he cries when mama leaves.
Yeah.
But other than that,
Yeah,
he smiles in the morning.
It's very limited.
It's extremely limited.
It's very limited.
Yeah.
We see according to the Bible.
Al said, "Do you know that the Ray Stevens song? Would Jesus wear a Rolex? Obviously not. If Jesus had a goddamn Casio, he'd know how fucking late he is for his own second coming." Yeah, it's a good point. He clearly doesn't own a Rolex or any watch for that matter, or even knows what time is. You know, that's as most non-existent beings. You know,
Bible that prayer is extremely important in terms of us being transformed from the inside out. When we get aligned with God's down my prayers, and a prayer ultimately helped me notebook again that I've used.
Oh, that's frustrating,
debates.
man. So they started with a clip about objective morality, and then he never addressed it throughout the whole thing. I hate it when they do that. Like, don't like make me wait for something that isn't ever going to come, man. I fucking hate that shit. But you know, but if you want to come, jeez, go to adamandeve.com, enter that code word Brentley at checkout, and you can get 50% off almost any one item, 6 free movies, 3 free gifts, and free shipping on the entire order. Just go to adamandeve.com, enter that code word Brentley, that's BRENTLY at checkout to get your exclusive offer, man. Get your butt some stuff. It needs it. It needs all the stuffs. All the butts need all the stuffs. But if you want to support the show in other ways, liking and subscribing and sharing the show is thank you. Thanks. Amazing segue. Thank you. If you want to support the show in other ways, liking, subscribing, and sharing the show is like the best thing you can do, the easiest, the quickest, the cheapest. Other than that, we have a new retooled Patreon. So it is patreon.com/ punk apostate, all one word. So that's where we're at now. And I do want to thank the patrons that we've got. We got some like a lot of help. It's been awesome so far. So we got Crazy Cat Lady, who's great. You know, I gotta love everybody's got one Crazy Cat Lady patron, you know, and that's just that she's just an honest one, you know, she honestly evaluates who she is. That's a Crazy Cat Lady. At the $5 level, which is huge. Thank you so much. Von Rick, Soul Strider, hey, at the $5 level, and had given a huge donation through Cash App. So thank you so much for that. It's fucking awesome. We got Tucker at the $1 level. Thank you so much. And Becky at the $1 level, and Jasper at $3. So hey, thank you all so much for everything that you do for us. It's a huge, big deal. But if you want to become a patron like those folks, go to patreon.com/punk apostate, all one word. And there's a video up there right now. It's like a new unreleased video. I'm going to try to do at least one completely unreleased video every week, and then maybe and then you get early access to some of the pre-recorded stuff too. So definitely check it out. It is worth, I think it's worth the money there. And it really does help us out big time. If you want to do Cash App though, our cash tag, just like our Patreon, is punk apostate, all one word. So if you just put that in, and you can donate anything you want, it's just a one-time thing, and it really does, you know, it really, really helps a lot, big time. So, hey, but thanks again so much for hanging out. It's always so fun chilling with y'all, and, but make sure that you stay logical, loving, skeptical, and compassionate. And we'll see you next time.